Teresa Bosco graduated from the Maryland State Teachers College at Towson in 1938 with a bachelor's degree in elementary education. Miss Bosco taught in public education for 14 years and served as a school administrator for 21 years. These are her reflections.
Miss Bosco, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your memories of your teacher preparation at Towson University and your subsequent career in education. This will add a great deal to our collective understanding of teacher education. I think the first place to begin is in the beginning. So if you would you share with us a little about your early social context, where you were born and grew up, and what you were thinking about doing after you graduated from high school.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to do this. I was born in Baltimore City. My parents were from Italy, and they believed in education. It was very strong for them, particularly my father, who had been in America for 7 years in New York City. So he went home to visit his brother and the rest of the family, because his brother lived in a different city than he did. So he went to visit him and his wife happened to be my mother's cousin. Took one look at her and fell in love. So after a while, they never did tell me just how long they stayed there, but he got married. And first of all, they had to check in America to make sure that he didn't have a wife here already.
Really?
And they wouldn't let them get married if that had been the case.
Well, sure.
So that was cleared, and to America they came. His sister and her 2 children came because her husband was working here. They arrived here and couldn't find a place to live, to rent. Within a week, they did. They were very fortunate. And then I was born. And I was a citizen, but they were not. But eventually they became citizens.
Indeed.
We lived in Baltimore City a short time. My cousin's family began to grow. They had quite a few. And they had a friend who said to them, Union Bridge is in Carroll County. They have a cement plant there. And we think that perhaps you might find a job there that would pay more than what you have been able to find here in Baltimore City. So they went to investigate, got the job, and the family moved there. There was a large farmhouse that was divided into 2, a small house and a large one. We had the small house because they only had one daughter, one child. The cousins had the bigger one. So that was fun. I had plenty of people to play with.
Yes.
So that worked well. We started school. In Carroll County, you had to be 6 before October. And if you were not, you had to wait another year.
I see.
So I was one of the fortunate ones that had to wait another year. Except that I was very shy. Arrived in school the following year, so that made me a little bit older. I think that was part of the problem for me. And the children used to tease me, children of the town. But that's usual. Children do that to other children when they are from different countries. It was then, and it is also now. So it's not unusual for us to be able to take it, except I wasn't one of them. Had a wonderful first grade teacher. I even remember what her room looked like.
Oh my heavens.
Everything in the room was labeled: chair, table, girl, boy, mother, father, man, woman. so forth. That lovely teacher that I had, I loved her, but she retained me another year simply because she felt that I needed to know more words in English, an extended vocabulary, pronunciation would be better, etc. And she was right. The retention was wonderful for me. Of course, my parents, who wanted education as a primary thing for me, would say to me as I was leaving to go to school, listen to your teacher. She wants you to learn the English, and we want you to learn the English, because this is our country, and we love it, and we're going to be here. So that was, I had a lot of pressure between trying to get over the shyness and doing what my parents wanted me to do.
Absolutely.
And of course, since my father could speak English, but he couldn't read, so he said to me, as soon as you get your books, after dinner we're going to sit at the table, you're going to read aloud to me, and I am going to listen and watch what you're doing, and I will learn. At the end of the year, my father got rid of the Italian paper, enrolled in the American paper, and off he went. I said, you're not asking me any questions anymore about the words and the pronunciation. He said, many of the words are Latin-based, and I know that. So it was easier for him, really, than it was for me. So he was, and with that, that was it. He never asked me another question about it. He was on his own, and
But
I was grateful.
well, but that was your first teaching experience.
Exactly.
So you got an early start.
I got an early start, and it was wonderful for me. But I had another interesting experience
Tell us about
in
that.
teaching. It was at the same school. I was had finished 7th grade, and before we went on to the 8th grade, which was the high school attached to this small community, and the professor there taught algebra, and he was also the principal of the school, of the elementary and the high school. And because I was able to do my, I'm trying to think, algebra, because that's what he taught. I was, somehow or other, that was very easy for me to do. So he said to me, would you mind having the children who are having some problems come to you and you help them learn the algebra? And I said, I don't mind at all. And I was very happy about that.
So
It
once
gave
again,
me courage. And that was my second teaching experience. Little did I know that I really was going to become a teacher. But the 7th grade teacher had all asked us, what were we planning to do as adults?
Yes.
And because I had had such a wonderful experience with the teachers there, I said, I want to be a teacher. Of course, in those days, girls only had several experiences. One, get married, be a secretary, be a nurse, or be a teacher. So I chose the teaching part. And lo and behold, it came true, but I didn't, at that time I wasn't too sure.
You didn't know it quite yet.
Didn't know it then. So we moved to Baltimore City, back to where I had been born, of course, and was in junior high. And the junior high school and all of the elementary schools were half-year sessions in Baltimore City. So you really had 2 half sessions in a year. they did not allow me to be out of the junior high, so I was back a half a year. They also had another interesting event, and that was that if you were in junior high, in order to do the 4 years of high school, you could go to a school for 3 years and do the 4 years.
It was an accelerated program.
Accelerated program. Well, it seemed that they had to have a certain number of students.
Oh.
And they did not have it, unfortunately. So they gave an option. The option was go to Hopkins University off Charles Street. The students would be taught by city teachers from 8 in the morning until noon. Then we would go home, and they assigned us enough work that we did 4 hours to 6 hours of study, and then go to bed, next morning get up, go through that routine again. We survived it.
But it must have been grueling.
It was. And by the time it was finished, we were exhausted. And it was almost time to go back to regular school. We were staunch people, whatever, but all of us made it.
Wonderful.
We all graduated, every one of us that took the course. So that was interesting and very rewarding. We were happy after that.
I'm sure.
That was such a wonderful thing.
You must have had such a sense of accomplishment.
I don't know. I think we got to the point where it was routine. You know, you did it day after day, and day after day. But it was great. I enjoyed it, and the others enjoyed it. And the ones that went there were the ones who had planned to do the 4 years in 3. That didn't work out because they didn't have enough students. So that was great. That worked out.
Now, what are you thinking at that point about what you're going to do in the future? And
well, we all decided we all decided we were going to be teachers.
Really?
So off we went.
Wow.
To Towson.
And why did you choose Towson? That was just the place to go?
That was a place to go. That was a teaching college. So that specifically for that was it. And of course they had different levels. I think I remember it was just it was a 2-year school first.
It was indeed.
Right, and then they had Lytle Tall demonstration school. There was other demonstration schools.
Was Loch Raven one?
No,
maybe for
no.
high school. You didn't do high school yet, though.
No.
I'm not certain.
Montebello.
Oh, Montebello.
Montebello off Harford Road.
Sure.
Right. And then, of course, the Lytle Tall School, those two. I think the students, city students went to Montebello, and the county students went to the campus school, the Lytle T School.
Lytle Tall.
Yes.
Yes.
They were the ones. And it worked out very well. But then...
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, you said that you were a city student.
Yes.
That meant the expectation was that when you graduated, you would become a city teacher.
Exactly.
So it must be that perhaps that the city helped pay for this, or...
we didn't know the background for that, but it must have been. I know that they also sent us to observe the special school called the Bear School with children who had special needs.
Yes.
And
that was in the city.
That was in the city. But
So
I believe they allowed the county students to
do that as
do
well.
that as well.
Probably because
There might be students there, children there that were had needs and were being met by that particular school.
Right, right. So when you got to Towson, you were, and then I believe it was the Maryland State Teachers College at Towson.
Yes.
When you got there, you had classes though with the students who were
The
county teachers.
No, the first,
No?
not the first, no. The city
Oh.
students had their own.
Really?
And then, while we were there,
Uh-huh.
at it was changed. In 1937 was the graduating area for the city students.
Uh-huh.
Well, they invited us to take the extra year
Uh-huh.
and get a degree
I
if
see.
we wished to do that, because it had just been instated for the county students.
Uh-huh.
They were the first ones that
I
the
see.
county was being. They were doing it for the county students.
Uh-huh.
So out of the group, and it was a large city group, 8 accepted the invitation to get the degree.
And you were among them.
I was one of the 8. So, and we were very happy about that.
I'm sure.
Because later on we met our third year people and said, they asked us how was it, and we said it was wonderful. And they said, you were fortunate that you chose to do that, because they had to struggle to many years in order to get their degree.
Yes.
So that was a happy part of their education.
And it was a very wise choice on
Yes.
your part.
Now, interestingly enough, there was a time when we, just at that time, jobs were very scarce. Teachers were not leaving their positions because there were no jobs available.
Right.
Very few, and it was very difficult.
No, we're still in the Depression.
The Depression time, very bad. Except that we didn't feel depressed because everybody was in the same situation. We said, well, we'll do the best we can.
Absolutely.
Yes. Some of us chose, and perhaps some of the youngsters, students today might be doing it also, I don't know. But most of them, I think, have cars. We had the streetcars, and when we got to York Road, there was at one spot where you had to pay a second fare. So it was another nickel.
Yes.
And some of us chose to walk. It didn't matter whether it was icy or anything else. We walked that mile or so. So we got our exercise, but we had company. There were many of us got together.
Right. And you got to keep your nickel.
And we got a nickel.
Teresa, going back to your education at Towson, can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Did you go and observe teachers, and tell us a little bit about your practice teaching when you actually did some student teaching, if you would.
Well, we were very fortunate that we were given practical and theoretical, and it's so we were able to make lesson plans. They taught us how to prepare our lessons. Some were just, most of them were like that. And we did observations.
You did.
We went to the city schools for the city students. And they even allowed us to go to Loch School. The county students all went to Loch. And I don't recall that they went to the city, because they definitely were going to go into the county. and so they were doing county projects and so forth, and we were doing the city.
Do you have any sense of how those were different?
No.
No.
We couldn't tell. Now, when the 8 of us
Yes.
joined the county, then we
Yes.
took our classes with the county students. And I remember one of the things that we did was to learn just
I'm trying to think of
we did
So-
I know it. It's the health. It's a health one. I even borrowed the book. The health. We have a movie on it now.
some kind
Maybe
of...
I can't. I don't think I've written. Let me check to see
Sure.
if I've written it down. Grey's Anatomy.
Oh,
At
Isn't
my
that
age, I'm beginning to
interesting?
get things. Wait, but usually I have to think back into my files, and my files come up a little bit late sometimes.
I understand perfectly.
Yes,
Grey's Anatomy.
yes,
My
Grey's
heavens.
Anatomy, and it so happened that my parents had a small restaurant, and I would wait on tables in the evening, and some of the students from Hopkins Hospital used to come there. So I borrowed everybody, when it was time to have a test on Grey's Anatomy, we had, at the end of the year, we couldn't find books like Grey's Anatomy in the library.
No.
So I asked one of the students from Hopkins Hospital if he had Grey's Anatomy and would he lend it to me, and he did.
How wonderful.
So that was just great.
Yes.
And I got through that. And since my father had learned how to read, I said to him, will you please look at those diagrams and tell me if I'm saying it right? And I went through the pictures and told him the design and so forth, and the names and the words that were involved in that. So since I had taught him, he was helping me to remember
Very
what
nice.
was going on.
That seems fair.
Wasn't that something? So I'm really getting into teaching very deeply
You certainly
by
are.
this time.
Yes. And what about student teaching?
Well, in student teaching, I did mine in the city. The second grade and the fourth grade. So there were 2 experiences.
Yes.
And
Did you have a preference? Did that help you decide whether
I-
you wanted to work with older students
well,
or younger?
I like both of them. In fact, in my experiences, when I became a teacher, I taught from first grade through 6, so I had experience in all of them,
Wow.
and that was interesting, and for me it was fun because I got to know different age groups of children.
Sure.
And their parents were so wonderful, since they are the first teachers for
Yes.
their children.
Yes.
Or perhaps it might be a grandmother or an aunt or someone, whoever is the important individual in that child's life. They were willing to share with us what they observed about their children. If there were some problems, they weren't ashamed to say, we have a problem. And that was so wonderful for us as teachers to try to understand what the children are meeting in their life and what was happening to them, so that perhaps we could find out how we could help them
Yes.
in school while the parents were helping them at home. There was a good exchange. Hopefully it's always like that. I always feel like that it was so rewarding for me to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, you graduated now in 4 years, and you got your bachelor's degree.
Right.
Because you hung around for that 4th year
That's
and worked
right.
very, very hard. Did you have to take any kind of test to be?
The city had 2 days of testing.
Really?
2 days.
My heavens.
We were exhausted. So what we had been doing before, you know, in all of that, and working and doing our student teaching, because we did work hard on that, came in handy. And I borrowed the Gray's Anatomy again, and there were questions on that test with that. Now the county, I think, had their own, and whether they had a test or not, I really don't know.
Right.
I didn't know about that, but I know the city people did. Now, interesting too is the fact that I did not get a job.
But it
There were
wasn't. But
only-
you passed the test. It had nothing to do with the test.
There were only 3 who were employed in the city.
Wow.
Only 3, because they just didn't have vacancies.
Well, you said that people just weren't leaving.
It was very difficult, and we were very fortunate. They said we could sign up to become to do substitute work. And the first school that I said that I would, and the first school that I went to said that they had a teacher who was going to be out for, I think, a couple months. And would I be willing to work with there? So I did, because that meant that I was getting $3 a day for 3 months, you know?
Yes.
And that at that time, even though it sounds terrible today, we were grateful that we had that.
Yes.
Because there wasn't any other work to be had. Let's see. Then I went to at the end of that time, I went to another school, and I was there a month, traveling by bus. Or really, it wasn't bus, it was a
Streetcar?
Streetcar. And we had some children had really big problems. And when I got to that one school, I lasted the whole month there, the month of December. We had others had been there from September until I got there. They had had 4 substitutes that couldn't work out. And I guess the strength of that was that I had been at that one school for 3 months. That was good practice for me, but it didn't count toward my 2-year promise to work for the state.
So you did have an obligation to work for the state.
Yes,
And that
2
was
years.
2 years.
So that was out.
Yeah, that's too bad.
So then at Christmas, right before the beginning of the new year, I got a call from the principal of that school where I had been for 3 months. There was a different teacher going out, and would I go there for 3 months? And that was great too, because I loved them, and we got along so well. And it would be the same children, because they had different classes. Some were reading, some was math, some was social studies, but most of it was reading.
I see.
So I was having the same children, and we got along well. We were having a good time, a good time learning, because they were wonderful children. So I can't say enough for them.
Yes.
And their school, and the other teachers who were there, because they were willing to share with me.
Right.
And I even had to teach one night when they have the PTA come.
Oh, my
When
heavens.
the parents came, and
Yes.
I taught before. And I thought, I'm not a teacher yet. But I was, so
You were.
thanks to Towson.
And so that took you almost to the end of the school year?
That was like that to the school year. Yeah.
So, okay.
And then
Yes.
no job for the next time. Oh, and I started applying to the schools in the county that were nearby because I had an obligation to the state.
Yes.
And I hadn't been able to fulfill it because financially it was good to have this long-term substitution, but I wasn't being able to do my obligation. So the following year, I continued doing the substituting, but I started then applying to different counties away from
Baltimore City.
And I found one in Charles County in southern Maryland, a 2-room school.
Oh my.
And no car. So my dad, who had the car, and my mother took me down so I could visit with the superintendent, meet him, and say whether they would be willing to give me a job. So fortunately, I was lucky with a 2-room school. The 2-room school, I had the first, second, and third grade, and the other teacher was a man, and he had the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and he was the principal.
Oh, okay.
So I also walked to school at that time. So physically, I guess we were very fortunate in a way that I was able to do the walking.
So where did you live when you were in?
I boarded with one family for just a short time, but they had an illness in the family.
I see.
And I was fortunate that a young couple with a little girl promised to give me a room. Not only did they give me a room, and it belonged to their little girl.
Oh.
So the mother said, "Would you be willing to let me use your room when you're not here during the day?" And I said, "Of course, this is your house." You know. And the little girl was a sweet thing. We had no problems. She even packed me my lunch.
Oh.
And did a wonderful job. I enjoyed every bite that I ate when she prepared meals. Used spinach instead of lettuce sometimes, and did a variety of things. And they just treated me royally. And when I would go home for the weekend, they would meet me. I would find transportation to go to Washington, and then from there to Baltimore. And they would pick me up at the bus station nearby. So on Sunday nights. So that worked out well.
It
so
certainly did.
It was great.
Now, how long did you teach in Charles County in your 2-room school house?
Well, I was there 2 years. And one of the students in that school I saw again here in Baltimore County.
Really?
And because my 6th grade class went to he became a teacher.
Oh, okay.
So he heard them talk about Miss Bosco. And he said to them, "Is her first name Teresa?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, she was my 1st grade teacher." And they said, "How old is she?" Because they always used to ask me, and I would say 99. Of course, they knew that, and I was teasing them.
It wasn't quite
but
accurate.
That was it, right? Yes. So he called me and told me about it, and he said, "May I meet with you?" So he was surprised to see me, and he recognized me.
Sure.
Right off.
Of course.
And I recognized him at that stage.
Well, he probably looked a whole lot more different than you
did. He did, of course. But he was a wonderful person, and he was a wonderful little boy.
But it doesn't get any better than that, to have one of your former students remember you so clearly.
Right.
And I'm sure he must have looked at you as an example of
He
good
told me
teacher.
that he did, which made me feel fantastic. But then all of my students, to me, were wonderful. And I admired them for their tenacity, for what they wanted to do. And that was great. Yeah, just fun.
So after 2 years in Charles County, did you?
I was longer than 2 years.
Oh,
I
it
was
was.
2 years in a two-room school.
I see.
But a former teacher wanted to be there.
I see.
And they had a vacancy in a consolidated school. So the superintendent said, I think you will like going to this school and you will get a lot out of it. Well, I did get a lot out of it because it had quite a few number of children who were moving in and out. So sometimes I would have a class that's when I had a full-size first grade class. Then after that, I had a second and third, I had a first and second, I had a third and fourth, I had a fourth and fifth, a variety. Well, I was there for about 3 years. Then my parents weren't feeling too well, particularly my father. And they said, could you get a school nearby, closer to home? So I called, I applied in Carroll County. And of course that was a county that I knew about because I had lived in Union Bridge.
Right.
But this was in Westminster. And I was in fifth grade class, was my first class there, and enjoyed every bit of it. And then the principal of that school wanted to start a special school for children with special needs.
Okay.
So I said, oh, I can't do that. I said, I know we've done things like this before. I said, if you'll let me observe so that I can find out, get an idea of what it's like. They said, well, we'll see what we can do. Well, they never did send me to one.
No.
But it meant coming away from there, from that school. But he encouraged me. He said, well, you've had such a variety in Charles County with those combination of classes.
Right.
He thought that perhaps I would be able to do that. There was a teacher there who had also had experiences in a variety of schools, and the two of us, she worked with the children, with the girls, and I worked with the boys. And they gave me a room that had vices, and I was supposed to teach them how to cut and saw and make objects.
Oh my heavens!
I know. So you know what I did that summer?
I can't
I went
imagine.
to all the hardware stores and everything. I found out about saws and screws and whatever else there was available, and how to paint and whatever. And then that was as close as I could get to being prepared.
I guess so.
And the teacher who was next door to me had the girls, and she did sewing with them.
I see.
I even did sewing with the boys.
Good.
But it was, I said, if you're a sailor, you'll go on ship, and you won't have your mothers to do your sewing for you, so you better learn how to make some stitches. So that consoled them. I had to make little things that they could sew, like little boxing gloves or something that was more masculine. And that worked out well too. So, but then I think I did that for 2 years. And then after that, they had a new school in Westminster, and they gave me my 5th and 6th grade classes back. So I went back to that.
Yes.
And that most of the time, that's what I had. Then my parents had to give up their work because neither one of them was able to do it.
Right.
So they depended on me.
Yes.
So I came to Baltimore County. asked for a position, and I went to Loch Raven Elementary. And at Loch Raven Elementary, I think it was the second year that I had students from Towson. Towson gave me their student teachers to teach
In your second
and
year.
observe and help them do things. And
Well, isn't
I had
that fun?
I had quite a few. So it was around Robin, wasn't it? Where we just came back.
Yes.
And and those students were wonderful. I don't remember their names, unfortunately, but I wish I had. But they were. I did hear from some of them every once in a while. One of them would write me a note, and I would write back. And we felt sympathy for each other.
Of course.
And the interesting thing was that I found how much I was learning from them as much as I was helping them. They were helping me too, because they were bringing up new ideas that they were learning at Towson.
Of course.
So
Yes.
that worked both ways.
Very nice.
That's good.
Now, Teresa, at some point in your career, you're going to be approached about doing some administrative work in the school system other than just teaching.
Well, I did. We always had to, every 4 years, we'd have to go to college to renew our certificates.
Of course.
So in one of those, I thought, I'm not just going to do that. I think I'll work for a degree.
Okay.
So I did. And I put on, I went to Loyola, and the paper that they gave me in order to decide what I was going to do, I said that I wanted to enhance my teaching experiences. And but at the same time, they said, please contact your principal and vice principal if this is what you should take.
I see.
So I did. And they looked at me and said, no, take that off.
Really?
Because they said you should take supervision and
Administration.
because you are already doing supervision with the students from Towson.
You certainly are.
Yes, so there I was, and I did. And I changed it, and I thought, well, see, this is the things that always amazed me was that people would say to me, will you do this? And I would say, well, I'll try and do my best. And it seems like it was always other teachers who were helping me out and urging me on, just like the principal and the vice principal did for that. Because if they hadn't, I don't know what they saw or thought I was doing. Apparently I was doing a good job with the supervision of the students from Towson. But they were wonderful youngsters, so I felt very happy to be working with them. So,
well, it sounds like a lot of people that you work with saw great promise in you to do other things, like become an administrator or supervisor.
And I did. I was a vice principal for 15 years.
Wow.
And 7 years as a principal.
Now, those 15 years you were vice principal, now called assistant principal.
Yes.
Were you at different schools as an assistant, a vice
Two
principal?
schools.
2 schools.
That was a total of 15.
Yes.
And during one of those times, as a vice principal, 3 of the teachers in various parts of the county were invited to go to South America, to Argentina and Chile.
Wow.
In order to work with the American school, the children there. Well, everything seemed to be going very well. Out of the 3, only 2 of them could go because one of them said that she had plans
I
to
see.
travel, and so she didn't want to give that up.
Uh-huh.
Well, later we discovered that it was just as well, because the week before we were to leave to go there, would you believe it? They had run out of money and they couldn't pay our salary, so we couldn't
Oh,
go.
no.
So we said, well, that's okay. We'll survive this too. It doesn't matter.
That's too bad.
Yes, it was too bad for the experience.
Sure.
I was so happy to go because I thought, oh, I can speak Italian, and Italian and Spanish were very close, and I had already been to Europe and in Spain and used my Italian to speak there. So I felt very confident about going,
Yes.
and it was disappointing,
Yes.
but it doesn't matter.
It was
Some other
that's
time.
Right.
Yes.
That's the whole other side of the world.
Exactly.
That south side
and
of the
I never
world.
did get down there, even on a vacation.
Oh, well. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
what did you do as a vice principal? What kinds of
Well,
responsibilities?
the beginning of it, and it was the part that I liked. It was helping the new teachers to do their planning, and if they felt they needed help, observe them a little bit. The principal was the one who really had to say as to whether how he or she thought about the teachers. But if he felt that someone needed extra help, he would ask me to do that. But most of the time it was just that I would teach. Like I remember one teacher said, I really don't understand how to do that. She had been away from teaching and had just come back. And I said, well, do you want me to do a lesson for you? And she said, yes, so I did. And that always helped.
Sure.
And they felt that they got, and if I had some ideas and the teacher said, I can't think of anything else that I want to do, or how can I do something a little better? Because they wanted to do their work well also. And I would do the demonstration lesson for them. And I enjoyed that because I was working with children again.
Of course.
Still.
Oh, but at some point, after 15 years, somebody convinces you perhaps to become a principal.
Right.
And what led you to say yes to that?
Because I always say, I'll do my best. I'll try.
And so where did you go as
I
principal?
As principal at Eastwood Elementary School in the southeastern part of Baltimore County. And it was a joy while I was there. And I have to tell about one teacher who came there to be a librarian. And she was fantastic because she brought her teaching skills to the library instead of being strictly, she was teaching things in the library instead of just library skills. And that's what the boys and girls there needed, and the parents loved her. In fact, she persuaded one parent to go back to school, and
Really?
and that parent got a degree.
Wonderful.
And got a better job than what she had. So that was a plus. So I was happy to have her.
Absolutely. Well, now those library media specialists, as they're called,
Yes.
are expected to have a teaching component. That's just an
Oh,
expectation
that's good.
now.
Good.
So what you recognized as an important function is something that now is expected
Yes.
of them.
I'm so glad because we had a librarian, the librarian at Loch Raven was wonderful too. She was, as a teacher, for me, she was a great help. And it was just wonderful. So I can't praise her enough for what she did.
Now, when you took on that responsibility as principal, what kinds of things were you responsible for as principal?
So much that my head was whirling some days.
I am sure.
Sometimes I would say, I hope I hope the bus from the board doesn't come today. I hope it doesn't come today because they wanted it yesterday. And that, I didn't enjoy that as much because I didn't get to work with the children as much.
Yes, I'm
And
sure.
that was the thing. But I felt that as long as I was doing as good a job as I could, then that was okay. It was needed too.
Well, you stayed in that position for 7 years, so they must have thought you were doing a pretty good job.
Right.
Now, did you stay at the same school?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Well, that was good too.
Yes,
That was get to know the families.
Yes. And I did get to know the families, and they were fine. And I got to know some of the children too, and some of them were very interesting. We had an occasion there were Greek children there, and their parents wanted them to learn. So that was a positive thing. You know, you start out well. We had one family that came in. She married. This was her second marriage. Her husband had died, and the Greek who was here in America, wife had died, and somehow or other, I guess they knew families, whatever. Anyway, they came in one day and wanted to talk to me about the mother of the one girl wanted to know why her daughter wasn't doing so well. And would you believe it? She said to me, "You're Italian?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "I know some Italian." I said, "Oh, fine." So she started to say some things to me in Italian. And I said, "Well, I think maybe I may not be able to do as well as you." But really, she had learned it from the soldiers, and I didn't know what kind of language she was getting. But I didn't want to insult her.
Right.
So I said, "Well, if I don't understand what you're telling me, is it all right with you if I ask your husband to tell me in English, and then I'll tell it to him in English, and he can tell it to you in Greek?" And the children were coming back from lunch, and they saw these people standing at the door with this language barrier that was coming along. You know, we were going. After they left, the children said to me, "What were you doing? What were you saying?" I said, "Well, so I said, well, she could speak some Italian, and she can speak good Greek, and I could speak some, she couldn't speak English, but I could speak English, so we traded, and between the three of us, we were able to converse, and hey, that's neat," they said. You know, they thought that was great. You know, we could speak another language and we could tell each other what to do. And it was great. It worked out well.
It sounds like it.
So that was part of the learning process.
Always.
Always.
We're
yes.
always learning.
Thanks to Towson.
Teresa, what have we forgotten about your career that we should be thinking about? Is there anything?
I don't know. Let me see.
Sure.
Well, I think I did say about going to Montebello
Yes.
to observe and do
Yes.
things like that. And the thing that I know.
Yes.
There are days when I used to think, do I really want to be a teacher? And then I would say to myself, yes, you do. And I'm glad that I did, because it was so rewarding, an experience. Teaching is such a, for me, it was rewarding because I started very early, of course. It was
Yes.
rewarding the fact that my father and mother both felt that that was the thing to do. And they learned the language. And I learned the language. And this became our country. And the world is, I just feel like all of the United States, we have people coming from all over the world.
We do.
And the teachers are the ones who are helping them to become assimilated to our beautiful country. So I'm
Indeed.
hoping that that will be great. And I hope that the young people who are thinking about becoming teachers will do so. It is rewarding. I've had two different people who started, one from the first grade and one who was in my sixth grade. And I see her now. I've seen her for 20 years now because her mother-in-law lives here.
I see.
And I got to see her. And it's just a thrilling, exciting thing to have, to know that youngsters that you have worked with and saw some potential, had it, and it came to fruition.
Yes.
So I don't know what else I can say.
Oh, you've just told us and shared so much. We are so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me to do this.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.